Hello and welcome to Snapkeep on the ManaBase.com, your home base for all things Magic the Gathering. My name's James LePage, and you might recognize me from my article series here on the ManaBase called The Meta Worker. On the Meta Worker, we talk about gameplay, we talk about strategy, and we talk about brewing. But I try to keep the word counts for those articles around 2,000 to 3,000 words. And what this means is that I have a ton of ideas sitting in a Word document on my Google Drive. They're just sort of little snippets of ideas here and there, but I never really flesh them out into full articles because they might only hit the 300 or 400 word mark. So what I've decided to do is start a new series here on the ManaBase called Snapkeep. This is going to be a home for all of those little short things that don't really have a home otherwise in an article. So without further ado, we're going to kick things off with our first topic, and that's going to be Dominaria tech that excites me. The first thing we're going to be talking about in Dominaria is enemy checkland reprints. Now, I'm really happy about these, simply because there's a lot of deck building freedom that comes from having good mana-based cards sitting around, good land-based cards. These enemy checklands are really great if you're looking to build any kind of deck. They will serve as good budget replacements for the Alpha Beta Unlimited Revised duels if you're playing on the more competitive or higher power side of things. Or they just serve as a really great mana base in higher number of colored decks, like 3 color, 4 color, 5 color. Because although they do enter tapped by default, there is a condition that's relatively easy to satisfy for them to come into play untapped. These are really great along with the Kaladesh Fastlands that just got reprinted, along with your Pain lands like Llanowar Wastes and Shivan Reef. These are just really, really great cards to have kicking around because if you ever want to build a new deck, I can tell you firsthand, if you want to build a new deck and you don't have the mana base kicking around, it can get really, really, really pricey. But if you use a staple binder system like I do, and you've got a good mana base, one of each card, you can actually build most decks for under $100. So this is the first thing that I wanted to talk about in Dominaria. Super excited about this. Pick these up while they're in Standard because they're not going to get cheaper than they will right after Dominaria gets printed. The next card I want to talk about, I'm irrationally excited about. This card, Lich's Mastery, is a brand new card in Dominaria, and it's a Lich effect. There are only a handful of Lich effects in the game. In terms of the enchantments, there's only actually 2 other Lich card effects in the game. The great thing about Lich effects is they're kind of feast or famine. They're go big or go home, right? You're either going to draw a ton of cards and probably win the game, kind of like Ad Nauseam, kind of like Necropotence, but they have that kind of suspense that comes from, does somebody have a Krosan Grip? Does somebody have a Nature's Claim? Where I'm going to cast this and I'm just going to die. Lich's Mastery is kind of a unique case because unlike the other 2 true Lich effects in the game, this one has hexproof. So this is going to be a little bit of a different card. Stay tuned. You're going to see an article come out from me that talks a little bit about Lich effects real soon. It might be coming out around the same time as this video, but if not, then shortly after. I had a lot of fun brewing with Lich. It's a really tough card to build around, and this Lich's Mastery is going to serve the same purpose as the original Lich in that deck. The one thing about Lich effects is I'm definitely the kind of person who, where in a fantasy novel or fantasy movie, I'm the guy that would be drawn to dark magic and end up dying because I dabbled in necromancy or something like that. That's my personality. This is a card that just speaks to me. I've always loved Lich effects. They're so difficult to build around, but this one makes it a little bit easier. So I am super, super excited for Lich's Mastery in Dominaria. Up next is Damping Sphere. Let me tell you why I'm excited about Damping Sphere. Gaea's Cradle, Doomsday, Storm, Isochron Scepter, Paradox Engine, Temur Sabertooth combos. Damping Sphere handles all of them. Damping Sphere is a really unique card because the first spell you cast each turn doesn't cost anything additional, but the second spell is going to cost 1 more, third spell is going to cost 2 more, and so on. This means that any deck that relies on really explosive turns of casting a lot of spells is going to get hit by Damping Sphere. I play Izzet Stax, so it's no mystery that I love Stax effects. I love orbs, I love spheres, I love Thorn of Amethyst, all of this stuff that interferes with other people's ability to play the game. You might think I'm a terrible person for that, but in a competitive meta, it's a kind of a necessary evil to prevent the game from ending early. I can't say enough good things about Damping Sphere. It is an uncommon, which is kind of weird, but this just means that there's going to be a lot of them around. You're going to be able to get an uncommon for less than the price of a used car. But this is going to be a really great effect to have in your arsenal. You can put it directly into play off of things like Whir of Invention and Tezzeret the Seeker, Transmute Artifact. You can tutor it up to hand off things like Inventor's Fair, Reshape, Fabricate, all those great artifact deck stalwarts. This is going to be something that if it hoses your deck and you play in a competitive circle, get ready to see it often. Come up with a game plan and figure out what you're going to do when it hits the battlefield. Up next is Artificer's Assistant. This is a 1-drop 1/1, and it might seem like it might be a little of a low impact kind of card, but I think a lot of people when they first look at Viscera Seer might think the same thing. It looks the same as Viscera Seer. It is a 1-drop, it is a 1/1, and it does have a scry effect. The only difference is this isn't a free sack outlet, so it's probably not going to be a combo piece, except for maybe in some of the combos that you might see with Mox Amber, which I'm going to talk about in a sec, and Master Transmuter. If you can cast an artifact, especially a 0-drop artifact, over and over and over and over again, you're going to be able to use Artificer's Assistant to cycle through your deck, to not cycle through, but to filter through your deck and put something on top of your library. That can be really powerful. You can put something on top of your deck to close out the game. Aside from that, it's a 1-drop. This means that you can cast it on turn 1, then cast all of your mana rocks and set up your next few draws. This can be really powerful, as we know, with effects like Ponder, Preordain, and Brainstorm. These are cards that I love to see in my opening hand because I can usually keep one less land and I'm not going to get punished for it because I can set up my next couple draws. Sensei's Dividing Top is another one of these cards. Being able to look at the top card of your library is a very, very powerful effect. And this is something that's going to come down. You can put it down before you cast your mana rocks in a lot of cases. So it's going to be a fairly strong card. I don't think it's going to see competitive play, but it might see some play in some of the more powerful casual decks that you'll see. The next card that I'm really excited to talk about in Dominaria is Broken Bond. Now, this one, you might not have expected to see it on my list because it is a sorcery, but it's only 2 mana, so it's not going to break the bank. It's not going to prevent you from advancing your own board while interfering with other people's attempts to advance their board. The great part about Broken Bond is that in addition to being able to destroy an artifact or an enchantment, it's going to let you put a land onto the battlefield. It's not tapped. It's really great. This is kind of like an exploration effect tacked on to a Nature's Claim effect. It is something that is going to advance your board, despite the fact that you kind of have to take a little bit of a turn off. If this is turn 4, you got 4 lands in play. You can only use 2 of them because you're going to use 2 of them for this. But you do get to put a land into play. It does accelerate you a little bit. If you're in a green deck and you're looking for something to complement your suite of things like Nature's Claim, things like Krosan Grip, things like Bane of Progress, things like Seeds of Innocence, this could be an additional piece that you might want to look at. Up next is Deep Freeze. Deep Freeze is kind of unique, not so unique. We did have a recent effect printed in Shadows over Innistrad block called Imprisoned in the Moon. This is a 3-mana enchantment that's kind of acts as quasi-removal. It's better than something like Shackles because it does cause the creature to lose all of the abilities. This can be extremely powerful for troublesome, difficult to remove commanders. Anything that's indestructible, like the God series from Theros or some of them from Amonkhet block, if you're having a lot of trouble removing a commander, this type of removal is great. Keeping it on the battlefield prevents it from going to the command zone and prevents it from being recast, but it totally neuters the creature. This is something that can come into play off of Zur. It can come into play off of Replenish, and if it does off of those 2 effects, you can actually attach it to a hexproof creature. Because you're not targeting, you're not casting it as a spell, it comes directly into play attached to something like Narset. This is one of those historically difficult to deal with commanders that you can get rid of with an effect like this. If you're playing an Enchantress deck and you're already, if you're in blue-green, you can play things like Imprisoned in the Moon, you can play Song of the Dryads, Lignify. This is going to be something that you can add to your arsenal. Again, it's not going to break the bank at 3 mana. And if you are playing Enchantress effects, you're going to get an additional value off of that. You might end up drawing a card. You might end up with another trigger. You might be able to recur it off of something like Miri if it's in the 99 and not your commander. Last but certainly not least, we've got Mox Amber. And I think out of all of the cards in Dominaria, this is the card that people ask me about the most. They say, Jim, what about Mox Amber? Is this a good card? Is this the real deal? Anytime an artifact costs 0 mana and it produces mana, it's net positive, it's worth a look. Mox Amber is joining a pretty elite group of cards in Mox Opal, Mox Diamond, Chrome Mox, and Mana Crypt as 0-drop net positive mana rocks. That's really important. Those cards are really great. They're format staples for a reason. With Mox Amber, though, it's a little bit different. Sometimes in the late game, when I've got a Mox Diamond in my hand and I don't have any land to play, I look at it and I say, maybe this card's not that good. I mean, realistically, it's an amazing card, but late in the game, it's just dead in hand. I think Mox Amber is going to be like that in the early game. Unless you're able to pump out a legendary creature or another legendary permanent like a Planeswalker really early, Mox Amber is going to sit in your opening hand and it's not going to do a whole lot. Decks like Captain Sisay and Atraxa, decks that play a lot of Super Friends themes, are going to like this card. Anything that has a really low-cost commander, something like Norin the Wary, Reese the Redeemed, Isamaru, Hound of Konda, if you've ever seen those Voltron decks, they're really going to like this card. But I think it's going to be maybe pretty average. As far as net positive mana rocks go, it's still above average in the grand scheme of all the mana rocks in the history of the game. But it's maybe not going to supplant the format staples like Mox Opal, Mox Diamond as the best mana rocks in the format. That's it for this week's episode of Snapkeep here on themanabase.com, your home base for all things Magic the Gathering. Join us next week when we'll be talking about Dominaria commanders that I'm excited about, and you can also check out my article series, The Metaworker. I'm James Lepage. Thanks for joining us, and have a great night.